Going.
Hey, how was that Bible study? Did it go good?
Good, good. It's going to go really good. Today. About to get started in just a moment. Hey, Shalom. The water for joining today, Hakim. Today's lesson, we're going to be jumping into biblical prophecy, namely what's going to go on over there in the land of the Levant, or as Esau calls it, the Middle East, involving the Persians, known today as the Iranians, and also the Arabs, and ultimately how they're going to attack these Edomites over there in the land of Assyria and right there in the land of Israel, and how ultimately this is going to lead to Amalek, the people who the Bible refers to as, as the people who today are referred to as the so-called Jewish people, the Khazarians. Those Edomites, they're actually going to start off World War III and get all this movement going on with as far as all the nations being gathered over there in the land of the Levant. But before we get started into that, let's go and give all honor and glory and praises to Hawa, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rabadash, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahushai, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahushai, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rabadash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today were known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as and still are the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. So, like I said, today's lesson we're going to be talking about ISHMAEL and the Carmanians awakening. Okay, and when I say the Carmanians, I'm talking about the ancient name that the modern day Iranians used to go by. Okay, so let's go and get started, and then we'll start expanding on to what's currently going on over there in the Middle East, which is going to change life drastically for those here in Babylon the Great, America, and really around the world. But let's get started. This is Nahum 3 and 5. It says, "Behold, I'm against thee, saith Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai of hosts. I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. And I will cast abominable filth upon thee, and make thee vile, and will set thee as a gazing stock." Now, the reason I read that first is because there's a reason why a lot of this is starting to happen now. Okay, with the peace talks basically dissolving over there with America and Iran. You have Netanyahu making an emergency visit here to Washington, D.C. while things are melting down politically over there in Israel, right? Now, because why? Well, because one of all the corruption going on there because of the Netanyahu presidential cabinet and, you know, his administration, but also because they are clamoring for war against the Carmanians, the so-called Iranians of today, okay, who the Bible refers to as Persia, or ultimately altogether in the 18 nations, they would be referred to as the nation of Elam, okay? It's like that, Jim. They would be referred to as the nation of Elam in the Bible, in Genesis 10, okay? Elam is comprised of the Indians, the Iranians, the Afghanistan, pretty much the stands right next to Afghanistan. That's Elam, okay? Pakistan's, those people. So what's happening right now is that you got Amalek over there in the land of Israel right now wanting to go to war with Iran. Because why? Well, because they know their time is short. Why? Well, because of the scripture I just read to you. Right now the Lord is showing the world these Edomites shame, showing the world the wickedness and all the embarrassing things and all the shameful things that these Edomites are into. Hence the whole, PDF files and stuff, right? How it's showing how these devils are straight up into debauchery and all wicked things, which the Bible refers to as the odious works, of witchcraft, right? Because again, why? Because they're practicing that ancient Canaanite ritual or doctrine, and it's not because these people, these rulers in power today are Canaanites. Hey, shalom, the water for joining. Yabba Shemashai Prakatha. Thumb to you, Akim, joining. Thank you for watching. So like I was saying, the current leaders of today, the so-called white man and Israelis, right, which biblically their true identity is that of the nation of Edom, and the so-called Israelis, they would be particularly of the top tribe within the nation of Edom, known as the tribe of Amalek. And it's funny because, Esau, we especially see Netanyahu and these Amalekites trying to attach that name onto these Palestinians, right? Calling them Amalek, calling them and then calling America Edom. Now check this out. If that's the case, with these devils, these Amalekite devils, these top Edomite devils in the land of Israel today, if that's the case, if they come out and they said that America is Edom, well, how could that make the Arabs, these Palestinians, Amalek? If Amalek is the top tribe of Edom, then that would mean spiritually that these Palestinians, these Arabs, would have to basically be secretly ruling the so-called white Western power. Well, see, it's not. You see, this is why that whole claim that Palestine is Edom, right, or Amalek, that's a bunch of bullshit, right? And the thing is, this prophecy can't be smudged, right? It's either it fits or it doesn't. So that being said, the Lord right now is showing the world that these Israeli devils, that they basically have been using a blackmail ring for worldwide domination, right? And that, for the most part, they packed the leadership by, buying seats, pushing people in, right, promoting certain agendas and people, to basically, and they've done it for long enough since they killed JFK. They've done this long enough that now the whole House of Governmental Representation, for the people of America, Babylon the Great, is now filled with these weirdos, these devils, these blackmailed puppets that Amalek is using to get America to bend their way. Okay, and that is going to ultimately lead into the destruction for America, Babylon the Great, as the Bible prophesies. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and read this, because with all the drama taking place and going on right now, the Lord told us that during the end days, that when he was asked for some of the tokens or some of the prophecies of what we should look for in the end days to know that we're in the end days, well, let's go and read that. He tells us what we should look for. This is Matthew 24:6. It says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." And that's what we're currently in. We're in the beginning part of this tribulation, which is going to come upon the whole earth, right? Ultimately, it's going to culminate with these Edomites making mandatory the mark of the beast, which is these implantable RFID chips they want to put in your hands, or also the accompanying Neuralink or other company brain chips, which they'll also accept for you to be able to load and save and present your coming digital ID, which is going to be tying you to your digital money, your digital ID, your digital citizenship, your digital passport, right? Your digital social credit report, right? Your fines, your bank accounts, your social media, your surveillance account, all these things, right? That's what these devils are ultimately looking to do, is to tie you technically, right? So that way they can ultimately own your soul, they can own your spirit, right? And this is why they want to tie you to the system. Now, let's read that one more time. This is Matthew 24 and 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, and see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So we've heard about the war going on over there with India and in Pakistan. You've had China, biting at the bit to invade Taiwan. You have America usurping Venezuela. You have Yemen against Israel, and then also basically Israel against Yemen, Israel against Iran. Basically, you have all of Syria just decimated right now, basically being owned by Edom, Amalek, and also some of Gomer, the Turkish government, right? So the thing is there's tons of wars and rumors of wars going around the world. And what's currently going on, if you're unaware, is that one thing, because of all these abominable things that are coming out about Esau, because of the E-files, is that it's shown people that these guys are straight up devil worshippers, right? So just like in the 1300s when the Knights Templars got found out for worshiping Baphomet and practicing this old occult world power, which is ultimately goes back to the Canaanites, which goes back to Egypt, which goes back to the previous world civilization, the Atlanteans, the Adamites, those people, right? These devils are practicing that same wicked witchcraft from back in that time. Okay, so that's why a lot of people get it wrong, saying that the current rulers of the world, that they're Canaanites, that the royal family and the Rothschilds, that they're Canaanites. No, they're not. They are Hebrew Edomites that descend from the line of Shem. But what they've done is, because all the way back from when Esau was born, he married Hamites, going against his mother's wish, right? He married into that family, and ultimately he learned about the dark arts, the left-hand power, the left-hand spiritual powers of like occultism, witchcraft, paganism, right? He learned from all that from the Hittites, okay? And remember, the Hittites were the first homosexuals, the first child sacrificers. These were the nation that Sodom and Gomorrah is known for, right? Those were Canaanites, Hamites. So that being said, today's leadership, these Edomites, the so-called Caucasian and Israeli race, they actually are practicing ancient, old world occultic religion, doctrine, right? Which again, the Canaanites performed, the Aztec followed this, which is why when they were discovered, we were basically sacrificing, humans, right? Because we were performing that old left-hand rituals, which the left-hand angels require for worship, right? I've done videos talking about Santa Sangre and how these left-hand angels, they require daily or weekly or sacrifices to continue to give you benefits, and if you stop, they'll ultimately come and they'll plague you. So that being said, let's go and jump down to this article, because one thing I want to do is I want to let you, Akim, know about what's going on in the world political stage. So let's go and jump real quick to the Times Now World at timesnownews.com. Says Israel signals readiness to strike Iran alone. Netanyahu heads to U.S. amid rising tensions. How close is military action? So if you haven't seen it, it's that really viral video right now showing just how much power Netanyahu has. Though he's coming in an emergency visit, right? They basically shut down an entire freeway, and they had a large caravan of at least about maybe like 30, 50 police vehicles escorting him to the White House so he could have this emergency talk with this Amalekite council, right? Because when you look at the group, basically Netanyahu got with all his Amalekite handlers here, the ones who handle all the left, right, and all these social movements, which ultimately control the American political system, and really the reins upon America or Babylon the Great. Let's go and read a little more. It says, Israeli defense officials recently told their American counterparts that Iran's ballistic missile program represents an external threat to Israel. Israeli officials conveyed in recent weeks that Jerusalem is prepared to act alone if necessary to dismantle Iran's missile capabilities and related production infrastructure. And it says, we told the Americans, and this is Amalek speaking to the American Edomites, it says, we told America, we will strike alone if Iran crosses the red line. We set on ballistic missiles, and source told the Jerusalem Post, adding that Israel believes Iran has not yet reached that threshold, but is continuously tracking developments inside Iran. So again, just like the Bible tells us, these devils, these Israelis over there in the land of Israel, which again, they're not the Jews, they're not the descendants of Jacob. They are the descendants of Esau, making them the biblical Edomites, the prophesied nation that the Lord prophesied would steal his land, as you can read in Ezekiel 36:5. Also the nation that would be revealed as being the Antichrist, the Bible says would come in the end. You can read Malachi 1:4, where it clearly points out the Edomites as the wicked, as the devils that the Bible speaks of. But then you can get into 2 Thessalonians 2:3 that tells us that once these devils, these antichrists, right, are identified, that's when the end shall come. And when, again, if you look at what's going on in the world, you're starting to see people being disassociated from reality just because of all the crazy things going on. You're seeing people waking up to basically the satanic rulers, or basically the evil wickedness of Esau, and they're ultimately going to eventually find out who they are, and this is why they're doing what they're doing. So let's go and read this. This is Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah 50:45. Therefore, hear ye the counsel of Yahweh Bashim Shai, that he hath taken against Babylon. That would be America. Okay? America is Babylon the Great in the Bible. It says, and his purpose that he hath purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Now, when it says the land of the Chaldeans, when you get into the Bible, the Chaldeans were the top class of ancient Babylon, right? They were known as the astrologers, soothsayers, the magicians, basically witches. Okay? America, because these devils, as what's being revealed now through the e-files and basically through the decades-long revelation that, of how these devils get down with their pagan and druid customs, child sacrifices, and basically their wickedness, right? That is ultimately being revealed. That is their, it says that's their, the reason why the Bible also refers to them as the Chaldeans, because they are the witches which run modern day Babylon the Great. And it says, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. So what that means is that the smallest of the flock of these Edomites, of the wicked, okay, is these Amalekites. Okay, when I say the Amalekites, I'm talking about Esau's first grandson. Okay, Esau's first grandson, meaning he would have the birthright promise, being the firstborn of the firstborn of Esau. Okay, that would be Agag, and I'm sorry, Amalek. Okay, and from Amalek comes Agag and all these people, right? But again, these so-called Israelis, they're the ones who currently run the world, and their brethren, the so-called, white people, the Swedish people, the German people, who the Bible refers to as Teman, all these different tribes of the Caucasians are subjugated to their brother, these Amalekites, which is why Amalek is in every one of his brothers' lands, running things, because their spirit just naturally bows down to Amalek. Because again, why? Because he is the top brother. He has that birthright blessing. Okay, so it tells you here that Amalek is going to draw the rest of the house of Edom, that being all the NATO nations, as what we refer to today. Because again, EU and NATO is basically all the what is found. I have a video. It's funny because it shows you how all the NATO nations are pretty much white westernized nations, right? And basically what it is, it's the house of Esau just hidden behind bureaucracy, behind their form of magic. Remember, these devils use magic, or their form of magic is wordplay. They hide themselves behind words, hence the city of London within the city of London, right? The what is it? Washington D.C., the District of Columbia, was being established over Rome, which is what the city used to be called there, right? And that the Senate House sits right on lot 666. All these things are these symbols, and just like it's been said in history, symbolism shall be their downturn, right? These devils showing who they are, and their fruits have revealed themselves as the Edomites. Because again, you don't see the Arabs, Ishmael. You don't see the Persians, who they paint as the boogeyman, having all these secret, occultic, devil, satanic symbols in their system, right? They don't hide it amongst the media. They don't brainwash the populace. Well, at least, to a point where it's demonic and wicked to its core, right? See, so the thing is, it's very clear who these wicked are, right? So, and eventually these people, these Edomites, who we know those are the Edomites, once they're going to do some sort of event, which is going to draw ultimately the other nations into a fight, and everybody believes it's going to be when they attack Iran, or as the Bible refers to them, as the Carmanians, or the nation of Elam. And again, everybody kind of knows this is why Washington D.C. right now, they expect to be extra busy with the weeks-long projects or events taking place with the Iran skirmish with Israel. Again, this is why they shut down that big freeway, just to bring Netanyahu in to meet with Trump. Because why? Because Amalek wants this war. Trump is trying to stop it, supposedly, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure Trump is simply just trying to find the situation which best suits him and his family, right? Which again goes back to the same characteristics as Emperor Nero in the Roman Empire. He was the same way, right? He set up his family, which is when you look at Esau, he has that same, Trump, he has that same spirit upon him. So let's go and jump to this. This is Joel, because either way, what's going to eventually happen is that Amalek is going to do something. Either he's going to go in by himself and attack Iran, right? Or he's going to cause something. He's going to go in and try to maybe plant like a false flag. What he recently tried right now with these riots in Iran, right? Apparently, the Iranians caught all the Israeli provocateurs, and they put them to death, right? And that's why the planned false flag that they had over the land of Israel, with the mass amounts of death that didn't really happen, of how Iran was killing its people, that shit was fucking fabricated. It was pushed out through Esau's media in a way to try to get that image pushed out. But again, they ultimately failed. Now, that being said, let's read this. This is because eventually what's going to happen is these Amalekites are going to do something. Be it that these attacks, these recent attacks that they're biting at the bit to do, which again, apparently with the American Jewish Council, they come to a consensus. But we'll see. So, and again, with the time clock of the Epstein files being released, everybody finding out that these Amalekites were running everything secretly, and this is why America's in the shitter, right? It's because these Amalekites know that they have a short time before everything implodes, before they lose full power over America. So let's go and read what's going to be the result of these Amalekites doing something over there in the land. And again, we believe it's going to be with Iran, right? Because it tells us this. It says, this is Joel 2:20. It says, but I will remove far off from you the northern army, and I will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face towards the east sea, and his hinder part towards the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. And this is ultimately talking about how the Lord is going to cause an event to take place where the Babylonian military is going to leave the shores of Babylon and go over into what we know today as the Arabia Peninsula, basically Saudi Arabia, right? Where basically Esau has been running his military operations from. Okay, so the thing is we are seeing these things starting to ramp up, right? America, Babylon the Great, under Trump's directive, has already sent 2 American aircrafts carriers over there to the land, the Persian Gulf, right? Or I'm sorry, is the Indian Ocean, right below Iran. And again, you probably heard in the news that America shot down an Iranian drone that got too close. You see, because again, why are these things happening? Because prophecy is playing out. This is why we're seeing so much agitation in the world, right? People are waking up. People are I've been watching videos of people talking about how things just don't seem right anymore, right? Well, that's because people are disassociating with this false reality, with this empire of lies is crumbling down. The Lord is starting to put that he's starting to strike these devils down while they're filling their belly. This is part of it, right? The plans that these Edomites have made with the 3 world wars and the world domination, they've already fallen behind schedule, which is why, again, this plan used to be the 2050 agenda. Then they lowered it down to 2045, the 2040, and then eventually now the 2030 agenda. And why? Because what it tells us in the Bible that Satan, knowing that he has a little time, he's going to ultimately come down harsh on the inhabitants of the world. And that starts namely with you Negro, Latino, Native Americans, because you are the house of Israel. You are the true biblical Israelites in the Bible. Okay? And what we're going to see after whatever happens over there in the land of the Levant, that Amalek, these small hats, are going to cause, we're going to see a large deploytation of military forces of America, right? They're basically going to dump over there. And again, if you're in the military, your ass is going over there. And if you go over there to the land of the Levant, you're not coming back. The Bible tells you, man, that the Lord's going to make utter destruction of all the armies that he's gathering there. Let's actually get that real quick. Let's water. This is Joel 3:2. It says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered amongst the nations and parted my land. Now notice there, the Bible says the Lord's going to plead there for his people, his heritage. So this right here proves that you got to be of the house of Israel. You got to be an Israelite, a so-called Negro, Latino, Native American, or your father's lineage got to come from that bloodline for you to receive that salvation. Now again, you're going to find that most people in these end times, the ones who are following God, who actually are trying to find him, they're going to be Israelites, because it tells us in Revelation 7 and 9 that there's going to be Israelites, the saved people, coming out of every one of the 197 nations upon the face of the earth that go back to the 18 biblical nations. Now let's go and read that again. This is Joel 3:2. I will gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. So the valley of Jehoshaphat basically is right there in the land of Israel, right? Namely, where we see what's referred to today as the West Bank, right? If you've been paying attention to Israeli political news, you'll see that the Knesset is basically like the Senate over there in Israel. They've already approved military operations inside of the West Bank. So all this stuff about the world getting upset and free Palestine and free Gaza and all this type of stuff. If you think the world's pissed off right now because of Gaza, just wait until these devils finally initiate the plans which they already voted on and approved for their military to go in and take the West Bank, which again happens to be the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is where the Bible says Armageddon's gonna take place, right? It's because of this incursion and also the attacks that these devils, Amalek, is going to do on the Iranian people, which is why, again, he came over here to Washington, D.C. in an emergency meeting with Trump. They shut down the entire freeway from the airport to the White House, right? So that way, why? Well, we'll find out in this coming week, but we ultimately know it's going to be because they're going to start some event which is going to cause World War III to start. Hey, Shalom Alaikum for joining. Khan, glad you enjoyed the sermon. That's Esau's Tower of Babel. That's the magic that he's been doing, right? Is basically using all these different technologies of the old world, Atlantis, right? The Bible refers to them as the Adamites, to basically open up these different portals, right? Try to get more power from the left-hand angels, right? Or what the world refers to as demons, or as the Bible refers to as the powers, right? So let's go and continue. Let's read that's Revelations, because ultimately what's going to happen is this. Because what we're going to see is events which is going to cause a lot of the nations to be gathered there in the land. Because again, remember, if Israel attacks Iran and Iran retaliates back, which again we're going to read, that's actually going to happen, right? Because some event's going to happen. This is going to be the event which is going to cause America, Babylon the Great, to go to the Saudi Arabian Peninsula and intervene for their little brother, right? Amalek, or what they refer to today as the Israel state, right? This is Second Ezra. Let's see. Second Ezra. How's it going, brother?
You have a YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen you for a while now, so I'm like,
Gotcha, man. You believe in the Bible?
oh yeah.
Gotcha, man. Nice. So, can I ask you what your nationality is?
Black and Mexican.
Black and Mexican? Beautiful. What's your father? He's what?
My father?
Yeah?
Like my dad?
Yeah, your dad. Black, beautiful. And that would mean, according to the Bible, if your dad goes, if he's in a so-called African-American, so-called Negro, you would be of the house of Judah, okay? Because it's found that the so-called Negroes, what they are, is they go back to the house of Judah, hence making them the true biblical Jews, right? Also, mixed amongst the so-called Jews that when they were scattered into the world was Benjamin and Levi. These would be like the people of the West Indies, the Jamaicans, those people, right? And then Levi, who would be predominantly people of Haitian descent.
Right.
But these are things that have been found out through historic discoveries from the Las Lunas stone here in New Mexico, Padre, I forgot Francisco's stones down there in Puerto Rico, right? To all these different things going on. Let me see. So this is.
Sorry to cut you.
No, you're good, bro. You're good. So, that being said, you say you believe in the Bible.
Yes.
So, what do you think is going on right now? Do you have a?
Crazy, man. He's gonna come back. I'll tell you that.
Definitely, man. It's happening.
This is in the Bible. Everything he's saying is happening in the world. But people not seeing it.
Yeah. No, exactly. But remember, that's part of the devil, right? Because it tells us in Wisdom of Solomon that right now we are fighting the great war of the great war of ignorance, right? And because when you look at what these devils are in power, what they're doing, you know, everything they put out from their media to their candy, their food, the chemicals they spray in the sky, it's all to deaden your understanding, right? Not only with the knowledge you take in, but your ability to physically take it in, right?
Right.
So, well, that's my channel there. All of your channel. People re-upload my channel, so here. You'll see some of my backup channels there for that. There you go. So, but yeah, you can watch these videos, and ultimately, what it is, you know, I'm not part of any denomination, right? Just like as none of us are part of any denomination to be so-called black, to be so-called Mexican. There's no club to join to be that nationality, right? The history, as it tells us in Romans, the mystery that has been since the beginning of time is that the Bible itself is not a religion, it's not a doctrine that you can follow. It ultimately is about a heritage, right? A heritage that is so lost and mixed in with all the nations of the world, which is again by the grand design of the Lord, that He would ultimately mix in the seed line of Israel, right? Which again, today predominantly would be the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, but as it tells us in Revelation 7-9, that the seed line of Israel is going to be amongst all the other nations of the world too. Because why? Because we love to fuck, man. We love to, you know, we sleep with these other nations. We have babies. We stay in the nations. We go to where we fit in, right? So the thing is, we mix, and this. Look at what happened in Vietnam. In there, you have a bunch of, you know, yeah, right, and you have also Mexicans, Native American Indians went over there too. They left their seed line there. Yep. You know, so that's what's going on now. And with all these things right now, which is what today's lesson is, I try to be here every weekend, but today's lesson is talking about how the Arabs and also the Iranians, they're about to rise up, fulfilling a prophecy in the Bible that they're going to come up against the Americans there, who are, again, this is another secret, I don't know if you know this, but the so-called Israelis there in the land of Israel today, yeah, and the so-called white man, right, which again crosses, you know, the Americans, the Canadians, the British, the French, the, you know, Australia, New Zealand, really, they all go back to a central ethnos, right? That ethnos, we kind of refer to it as Caucasian. What we're saying is that the so-called Caucasians and the so-called Khazarians, Israelis, they have a similar progenitor, right? They go back to Esau of the Bible. Now, have you ever heard of Esau?
Yeah, I heard that, yeah.
Okay, perfect, right? Esau was Jacob's evil twin brother, right? Now we understand that Esau, he came out a little different in appearance than Jacob, right? Do you remember what the Bible says, how he came out looking? It said he came out red and hairy, like a garment, right? So basically he was red. And when you look at like Caucasian babies, or basically people who have really light depictions, they come out red, right? Because why? Because the blood is showing forth. Now that there, when you understand, how if you get into like skin melanation and basically pale skin to dark skin, like for example, you say your dad is so-called Negro, right? But again, you're very light. You look like so-called Mexican, right? Well, that's why. Well, because the same thing that happened with you, where melanin was removed from your phenotype, right? Your family and the way that your family has mixed. So, for example, your dad, he's a Judite. May I ask what your mother's nationality is? She's Mexican? Okay. So she would be of the tribe of Issachar, right? So all Mexicans, we are the tribe of Issachar. So I'm an Issacharite. You, because your father, it tells us in Numbers 1 and 18. We are what our fathers is. Because why? Because our father provides the seed, right, that we come from, that we're born from, and your mother is simply just the soil, right? Which is why King David's ancestor, or his father, was able to have Ruth, who was a Moabite, who we know today as the so-called Chinese people, right? So that being said, back to this. Esau, he came out different than us, right? He came out with less melanin. And why is that? Well, because ultimately he had something on him which was a curse, right? Or it was a mark on him. What was that mark? Well, when you go back into the Bible, you hear about Noah, and he had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? Right? And then what happened? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, why was Noah and like his sons saved? Why didn't the descendants of Cain be saved, right? Why was Cain killed off?
Because God told him to make that ark.
Right? Well, God told Noah to make the ark, but his uncle Cain, he did what? He killed his brother Seth, right? And ultimately the Lord, remember, Cain killed Abel, Salaki, and God gave Seth to Adam and Eve, and he continued, and he was the forefather of Noah. My point being is, why did Cain not get to survive on the ark? Well, because he was rejected, right? And what did the Lord do when he rejected Cain specifically? He marked him. He gave him a mark. And it tells him that God made him leprous, right? Basically, and what is leprous? Now today, modern medicine says leprous is where your skin's like rotting and it's falling off of you and all that stuff. But originally, back before the Renaissance period, leprosy was referred to as the lack of melanin. Basically, where your melanin is off from your body. It's the same thing that the Lord did to Moses when the Lord said, to prove that the Lord had power. He told Moses, put his hand in his bosom and take it out, and his hand was white as snow, right? His sister Miriam, who rebelled against Moses, God punished her, and what did he do? He made her leprous, white as snow. So again, Cain being marked as with leprosy, that was a spiritual mark that had a physical, implication, right? He basically had no melanin. Now, what happened is Cain came and died, and because of reincarnation, which is a part of the Bible, which this modern system tries to make false.
Yep. What
happened is Esau, the reason he came out different, red, is because he came out with that same mark, because he is Cain in the reincarnation, meaning that the descendants of Esau, which we know today were the Romans, which again are today the so-called Israeli and the so-called Caucasian, okay? Those are the Edomites. So the people hence that rule the world today, that run everything, every big power, they are the Edomites. They are the descendants of Esau. And that right there was given onto these Edomites, because why? Well, because this was the blessing that their forefather was given before the true world order was established. And what is the true world order? It's where God's children, the Israelites, are given the reign of rulership, and God himself, or the Messiah, Yahweh Shai, who again, Yahweh Shai, this is how you say his name in Hebrew, and this is the Hebrew, this is the Paleo Hebrew, this is the Hebrew that Moses wrote, he read, and he spoke this Hebrew, or what science refers to, or archaeology, refers to today as Phoenician Hebrew, right? That's the old ancient Hebrew, right? So to say the Messiah's true name in Phoenician or ancient Hebrew, the Hebrew that Moses said, you would say Yahweh Shai, right? And why is that? Because Yahweh Shai is Hebrew for he is salvation, he delivers, okay? And same thing with God's name. Yahweh. Yahweh is God's true name in the Paleo-Phoenician Hebrew. And again, that simply just means he is in Hebrew. So that's how you would say God's name. You say Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai. Please hear my prayer. Please bless me. Protect me from these evils to come. Keep me from the mark of the beast. Keep me from these Edomites who are being revealed right now as these Edomites as the Antichrist of the world. So and that's kind of like what's happening right now, man. So do you see the war building up over there in Israel? Right? It's crazy, huh?
Yeah, it is.
But the thing is the Bible tells us, right, that knowledge is going to be what makes you stable in that time. So.
Yep. Amen to that.
Yeah. So it's good that it's good to hear that you know a bit about it, man. And that you know about. Now, have you ever heard of this Israelite doctrine? This Israelite.
I heard of it, but
knowledge?
I never got into it like I should.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, ultimately, man, and it's funny because you have a shirt that says Zion, right? You know, right?
It's
So,
crazy, huh?
right? I'm sure it's a good thing. Our spirits naturally, you know, our spirits naturally vibrate and go towards goodness, right? The Lord, one of our commandments is to hate the evil and love the good.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So that's why, like, it's naturally built in our people, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, and even the odd white man, the odd Chinese man, which is why you have, like, that odd white guy, the odd white, that has flavor, man, that could dance, that could sing, right? They're like, oh, shit, man, you're Korean. Oh, okay, well, you get down, okay. That's because his seed line, unbeknownst to him, his father's seed line goes back to the Israelites, who we've mixed in with everybody. Zion, right? So that's why, just like our spirits gravitate to more righteous, like energy, spirits, right? Higher frequency, right? It tells us knowledge is too high for a fool, right? Or wisdom is too high for a fool, which again, meaning that this world is stuck in wisdom, or stuck in not folly, because it's not vibrating high enough, right? Because it's currently being ran by the wicked of the earth. Because remember, the Bible makes it very clear. There's 3 types of people. Even though there's 18 biblical nations, there's the 197 nations that exist today, go back to, the Lord ultimately breaks it down into three people. The children of God, right, who are the biblical Israelites, who are these people here, okay? And you have the children of men, which are just simply the other background nations, the nations who come from Adam, but ultimately they're, for some reason or another, they were rejected, right? Just how Cain was rejected because he didn't meet the proper sacrifice where his brother did, right? Just like how who was it? It was how Shem was selected, right? But his brothers Ham and Japheth weren't, right? The Lord didn't like hate them and ultimately like, you know, put them away. The Lord ultimately wasn't dealing with them anymore, right? But he did use them as it tells us in Judges 2:20 that the Lord was going to use these other nations that come from these other groups of people. Because remember, there's 3 groups: Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? And those nations have their individual nations, but yeah. So the Lord said that the reason why he didn't just kill those nations right then is because he was going to use these other nations to train us Israelites up. Because when you look in the Bible, the Israelites, we've been in slavery to every one of these other nations, right? And right now, we're currently in slavery to the last nation in power, the nation of the Edomites, right? Which again, these are the people who are the Caucasian Israeli race. And again, and just like us Israelites, we've mixed in with every other nation. These Edomites, they've also mixed in with every other nation. Again, so this is why I say you got to take every one of the 197 nations and understand they're going to be split up into 3 groups of people: the sons of God, sons of man, and the sons of the wicked. And who are the sons of the wicked? Those are the people who descend from the line of Esau. It tells us in Malachi. Check this out. It tells us, you know how everybody right now is waiting for the Antichrist to be revealed, right? Now remember, yeah. So what happens is the world is being purposely deceived to try to look for one Edomite. Oh, I'm sorry, one Antichrist, right? But that's not true. The Bible tells you that it's going to be a group of Antichrists. In fact, it's going to be a nation of Antichrists that people are going to realize that they're the evil ones, right? And they're the Antichrist. And it tells you here, right? This is a Revelation or Malachi 1:4. It says, whereas Edom, remember Edom is the biblical name of the so-called Caucasian and Israeli race. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return. These devils, they went down during the time of the late Roman Empire, right? During 200 to 400 AD, these Edomites that were in power, they were the ones who kind of stole, cheated, killed, and massacred their way into the seats of power. They took over Greece, they took over Rome, they took over basically all of Europe. But these were the what I refer to as the pagan Romans. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I'll
ultimately,
say that.
yeah, right. In 70 A.D., they ultimately came against us, the so-called Israelite, or I'm sorry, the Israelites, and the so-called Negro or the Southern Kingdom in 70 A.D. They destroyed it and took a lot of slaves from Israel, who again were so-called Negroes, so-called African Americans. They brought them into the slave markets, and those slaves, just like here in America, Babylon the Great, they freed themselves by buying themselves back. They went into military service. They came up in ranks, right, and they became people of notoriety. They became senators, rulers, and eventually they became emperors, right? You have Emperor Nerva, first documented so-called black emperor, right? Then you have Emperor Constantine, and then Emperor Constantine was a so-called black man. He's the one who established worship of the Vatican,
Yep.
right? He established the one world, or the one God worship instead of the pantheon of gods. Because why? Because he was making it into a religion that was based off of the slaves of Rome. Who were the slaves of Rome? They were the Israelites, or what we were referred to today as the so-called Negroes, but they called them the Jews that were in Rome. But again, we understand them today as the so-called Negroes, but in truth, spiritually, they were the biblical Israelites, the so-called Jews, or I'm sorry, the biblical Jews in the land of Rome, and they eventually took over it. Have you seen Gladiator Part 2 with Denzel Washington?
I see parts of that movie. I see the whole movie.
So that movie there kind of touches upon this, right? The black emperors. Well, right here, where it says, where Esau says that he is impoverished and he's going to build back. Well, again, Esau fell when he lost Rome Empire from 200 to 400 AD. That's when these Edomites, they eventually fled up north to the Caucasus Mountains, and they stayed there for 1,000 years, fulfilling prophecy that they would go and ultimately stay there for 1,000 years. And we know this time as the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, because what happened is, well, because this was the black-controlled European empires, right? You had the Byzantine Empire, right?
Sorry to cut you off. But
Yeah.
I'll run to the bus.
Hey, you take care, brother. Hey,
Hopefully next week and I'll talk to you again.
beautiful, bro. Just remember, man, Hebrew Israelites, you got my channel, you can watch some lessons. So,
Oh yeah.
hey, God bless, man.
God bless you, man. Thank you.
So again, so like what happened is, once Jake took over Rome, he eventually would bring forth his empires, right? The Byzantine Empire, which was the Western Empire, or the Western Roman Empire, and then the Holy Roman Empire, which Charlemagne, Jake established, that would eventually spawn, which again, the Holy Roman Empire was in what we were referred to today as modern day Germany. It was right there, but eventually it would span out to Britain, France, Spain, Germany, all these European nations, and hence this is where the black controlled Europe was in. And the reason why they say it was the Dark Ages and nothing happened there is because these devils, these Edomites, when they came in power during the Renaissance, which started from 1200 to 1400 AD, what they had to do is they destroyed all the records, right? As it tells us in Job 9:24, they covered the faces of the judges thereof, right? They chopped noses off of statues, they burnt manuscripts, they burnt testimonies, records, right? And this is why the historic records don't match up with those found over to the east in the Russian Empire, the Russian province, where the black idols are still kept, along with the black historic records, which again prove that the so-called Negroes were in charge of Europe during the time of the so-called Dark Ages, the so-called Middle Ages, right? And again, these Edomites, they came back into power, right? And it says, we will return and build the desolate places. Right, these Edomites, the Lord started putting it into their spirit to start to come up out of the Caucasus Mountains. The Amalekites did it first by settling in the base of the Caucasus Mountains and establishing Khazariah and mixing in with Moab up there. And then later on, you also had these Edomites starting to come down. And ultimately, this is where you get like the Edomite slavery that took place during the silk trade. And basically, he was a slave to the Arabs. And you know, this is where you see all those paintings of white women being sold by Arabs, because again, it was this period when Edom, they were being reintroduced to the Dark Age Europe, and they were ultimately being bought in as slaves, and they eventually started, little by little, started to mingle up amongst the people. And you hear the story about Amalek poisoning the wells, right? Basically causing the Black Death, which totally happened, man. And there's a reason why they call it shit Black Death, man, because that's Esau killing off Jake, right? Doing wickedness to translate the kingdom from one kingdom to the other. as the Bible says, right? Right, going in and eventually up until about, what was it? It was in the I think early 1800s when the last official bloodline relative of Jake, right, the so-called Negroes that ruled upon the European seat was Queen Victoria, right? She ultimately was given the rulership of the seat of England, and she ultimately had children with a German Albert Saxe-Gotha or something like that, right? He was a straight up Edomite. From that day, all those Edomites that come from that bloodline, right? All the kings of Europe that eventually would go on to start World War I and stuff, those were all Edomites that ultimately had now through scheming and coming against in political power to ultimately sit their seed upon the throne. They eventually took over and completely, and now they run the world and stuff. And this is why the world, since then, the world has just become extremely wicked with mechanized war, right? And then the introduction later on of the mechanicalized medical system, the education system, which is set up to indoctrinate. These are all key products of the wicked upon the face of the earth, right? But let's continue, right? Thus saith Yahweh Shemashai host, they shall build, but I will throw down. They shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom Yahweh Shemashai hath indignation forever. See, and the point there is that when it says they shall call them the border of wickedness, meaning that the world will eventually call these Edomites, where they dwell, wherever it is, be it in the land of Israel for the short time, land of America, France, England, all these places, Australia, the world is going to refer to them as the wicked, right? The evil antichrist that the Bible says that have to be identified before the end comes. And that's what's happening right now, right? With all the e-files being revealed, showing all these political people around the world have all involved in this, from cannibalism to sex trade to political and banking corruption. And the funny thing is a lot of this is actually manufactured embellishment by these Edomites, because again, they know that this old world system has to go away. So what do? Well, not only do they actually make these events go through, because they're actually performing magic, which does require the sacrifice offering, the blood for the rituals and all these different things. That actually is happening, right? But the thing is these devils know that they got to use these methods, these rituals, and what they're doing is they're actually performing these rituals, but they're also revealing to the world that they're doing it, and in doing so, they're showing the world just what they're really about, and also they're going to use this as an angle to destroy the old world tied to these occultic rituals that they're allowing us to see. This is again why they've only released about 3 million out of the 6 million Epstein files. And again, these are only the things that have been revealed or recorded in these files, man. Right? How many more different Epsteins do you have around the world that these Edomites are ultimately set up? Because remember, Epstein isn't the only control arm. There's many control arms within the music industry, the sports industry, the movie industry, the TV industry, the church industry, the Christian. There's groups of Amalek and Edom in powers of control here, the government, right? Because why? Well, because this is Edom's system of control. Okay, so let's continue. So now that we know that the world is eventually going to call these devils the wicked, what is the Lord going to do? Well, Joel 3:2, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered amongst the nations, and pardon my land. So again, the Lord ultimately is going to bring all the nations there into the valley of Jehoshaphat, the West Bank area, right? To do what? To ultimately to pay them back for what they've done to us throughout all history. All these nations, which is why all these nations are eventually going to be destroyed, right? Let's go and get that real quick. That's Revelations. We'll get this and then we'll be out, Akim. This will be the last one. So this is Revelations 19 and 24. It says, let me see. Actually 19 and 14. And it says it's called this chapter is called Victory of the Lamb. So this is when the Lord comes back. He's going to ultimately take out these what we refer to today as the Illuminati powers, right? The world powers who are ultimately underneath Esau's control. The NATO, America, the westernized bloc power. Those are the Edomites Those are the biblical antichrists. Those are the people that the Lord is going to ultimately take out. That's who the Lord is going to have victory over. Or in those famous statues where you see Michael, the archangel, killing the dragon, that's what it's referring to. God coming back with his powers, in this case, Archangel Michael, killing these Edomites, who the Bible refers to them as the great dragon, who was that old serpent. Let's go and read it. This is Revelations 19 and 14. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses. Right? That just means that they came in with all these UFOs, right? Those UFOs are basically what it means by white horses. Horses simply just means power, okay? Because remember, John the Revelator had no vision, or he had no reference for what he was looking at. When he was looking out the window of these chariots and he was seeing all these UFOs, these chariots, he referred to them as chariots, right? And he called them horses because he knew that horses were strong back then. You could explain what a motor or a V-twin or a gravitational repulsor is, right? To poor John, man. He didn't have that knowledge back then, okay? This is why the apostles, starting with the apostles, they say we have more information now, more knowledge now than what our predecessors, the old prophets, did before. And why? Because, well, it tells us here, the Bible says, in the end, the Bible shall speak. Meaning what? That the prophecies, though it may have sounded like gibberish and didn't make any sense back then in the old world perspective, in modern day perspective, when these prophecies are going to be coming to pass, their narrative, their context is going to make sense to a modern day population. Okay, it's the same reason why we know that the charagma, the mark of the beast, which is going to come, it has to come of some sort of insertion, some sort of poke, right? Because again, the word there is charagma, which goes back to the word karox, which is ultimately it tells you palisade, or basically a spike, right? An obelisk, which is what you've seen recently with Iran burning down the obelisk and the Baal statues, right? And again, that right there is what's causing these Amalekites, these Edomites, to basically start to speed up, because the world is seeing their wickedness. The Lord has lifted up these Edomites' skirt, and the world is starting to rise up against it, which is why they're burning effigies of Baal and the obelisk, which again goes back to the Freemasons, which run America, the world westernized governments, which ultimately that's just the knowledge that goes back to Egypt, which Egypt simply was a subsidiary, a small province of the previous world civilization known as Atlantis, or basically the world civilization which the Adamites ran, right? They're using that knowledge, and ultimately the Persians, the Carmanians, they're ultimately using that knowledge. So actually, let me read that real quick, because that's one scripture I wanted to get that tells us that they're going to come out. This is Second Ezra's, I think it's 15. Second Ezra 16, I think, that is a prophecy that tells us that the Arabs and the Iranians are going to come out to ultimately persecute Amalek over there in the land of Israel, which is going to ultimately cause Babylon the Great, the Edomites here, to go over there and try to help them out. If we can find it. Here it goes. It's a bit long. Let me take a drink before I start. This is Second Ezra's 15 and 28. It says, "Behold, an horrible vision and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble." And that's talking about these planes, these missiles that these Arab nations are going to shoot at who? Well, at these Edomites who are there in the land of Israel, and also there in the land of Assyria. Okay, it says, verse 30. Also the Carmanians, that would be the Iranians. Carmanians are simply the old ancient names for the Persians, okay, the modern day Iranians. It says, and also the Carmanians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. Again, America, these Edomites, they are the modern day Assyrians. They're the ones who currently rule the world. They're the modern day world rulers. Okay, and they happen to be in control of the land of Assyria today, because again, even Turkey is a mixture of Ishmael and Edom. Okay, that's what when you get into the caliphates and the Ottoman Empire, it was basically just a mixture of Edom and Ishmael that ultimately came and conquered the world for a while, right? Which are the progenitors of the Turkish Empire today. Continuing, it says, verse 31, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, and if they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them. And remember, it tells us the biblical nomen omen of these Ishmaelites when Ishmael was born said that he would be a wild man and that his hand would be against everybody. And that's what we're seeing right now, right? These Arabs, they live all amongst themselves, like it tells us in his prophecy he would. He's causing a lot of problems for the worldwide population, right? They're joining on to the BRICS nations, right? And it tells us here they're eventually going to attack these Edomites, even though these Saudi Arabians have been keeping it cool. Ultimately, the other Arab nations are seeing Saudi Arabia as traitors, and ultimately, with this Epstein file thing, where they found that one Saudi prince right on it, and eventually he's the one talking about he enjoyed the torture video. That Ishmael's about to wake the fuck up and fuck up these Edomites for a little bit, but again, because it's not biblical prophecy for them to be the rulers, they're eventually going to get their asses handed to them by these Edomites when the Edomites come back for retaliation. And it says, verse 31, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, and if they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them, then these shall be troubled and keep silence through their power and shall flee. Because again, these Arabs, they're gonna get all fearful, right? Because they're just gonna lose their will to fight against these Edomites. Because why? Well, because these Edomites are gonna come up against them. And it says, and from the land of the Assyrians, right, from these Edomites, shall the enemy besiege them and consume some of them, and in their hosts shall be fear and dread and strife amongst their kings, right? So again, all of these Arabs, after they come in and they attack, right, along with these Iranians, they're going to be fearful because they're seeing that now America is coming and they're starting to retaliate, and they're going to be carrying out a full-on invasion just like they did in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. Well, now it's coming to Iran, right? And also the Saudi Arabian nations, which is why America, as we read, is going to be going to the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, right? Because again, it's biblical prophecy that the Lord is going to cause them to go over there. 34, behold, clouds from the east and from the north onto the south, and they are very terrible to look upon, full of wrath and storm, and shall smite one upon another. They shall smite down a great multitude of stars upon the earth, even their own star, and blood shall be from the sword onto the belly. So again, if you've been watching the news, a couple months ago when I shot those missiles upon Israel, or how Russia, shot their their hypersonic missiles on Ukraine, right? They look like balls of light coming down, right? What did it say? Stars. So John the Revelator here, seeing these missiles hitting all these nations of these Edomites, he didn't know what to refer to them as. He didn't know that they were called hypersonic missiles, but they were big balls of light. And what does John know as the big balls of light? Stars. So that's why he said the stars of heaven are falling, right? Now he says in 36, and dung of men onto the camel's thigh, or hew, or hump. So again, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to die over there in the land of the Levant, basically over there in the land of Israel, because the Lord's going to cause World War III to basically kick off. Verse 39, even so shall not the plagues be slack. Oh, slack, Yakim. It says, verse 37, and there shall be great fearfulness and trembling upon the earth, and they that see the wrath shall be afraid, and trembling shall be upon them, and then shall there come great storms from the south and from the north, and another part from the west, right? So the Edomites over here, after whatever goes down over there in the Middle East with Amalek fighting these Iranians, right, which may just be starting from what we see, it's going to ultimately cause the Northern Army, the American military, to basically be deployed en masse over there to the Middle East, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, to do what? To bring forward this great destruction, which we're reading about right here. Okay, and it says, and actually, and that's pretty much it. You know, I ain't gonna get in. That's like a whole lesson right there. But it basically shows how these Arabs are gonna come out and ultimately attack these Edomites there in the land of Israel and Assyria, right? And basically they're gonna go out and they're gonna attack Esau in wherever country. That's why people are even having dreams of these Iranians and Chinese and Russians coming and attacking America here on American soil, because this is the time when when the world is patiently waiting to see what these BRICS nations, and namely the Iranians, are going to do in retaliations, right? The sleeper cells that the FBI warned about, right? Who we seen purposely coming into the country during the immigration crisis, right? The guy talking about, you don't know who I am, but soon you'll find out. Come on, man. These devils, it's all being orchestrated. But again, this is ultimately by the will of the Lord. And these devils, they know that this is getting out from underneath them. And this is why they're panicking. This is why you have, what is it? The Facebook guy, right? Zuckerberg buying a new mansion in Florida that has a massive bunker in it, because he needs to be by a bunker wherever he's at. Even if he can't make it to his private island, he could go to Florida and be there in the bunker with Jeff Bezos, right? Because these devils know that they're coming close. So again, they know that the time is coming for them to be destroyed, and that's ultimately leading to, like I said, Revelations. Let me finish that real quick. Revelations 19 and 24. We get to the good part. It says, verse 17, and I saw an angel, that be Yahushua, standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of the heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his armies. And the beast was taken, right? So Edom is taken. Remember, the Lord refers to these Edomites as the beast found in Revelation, right? The NATO power is the beast, and the whore that rides upon the beast is America. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet. The false prophet would be the Vatican, that same organization that was set up by the pagan Roman Empire that melded in pagan beliefs into the Bible, which that guy who came last week was all emotional about, right? He couldn't see that he himself was a pagan, right? By believing in the Immaculate Conception, the Guadalupe, the Virgin Guadalupe, right? The worshiping of Ishtar, the Queen of Heaven, right? Worshiping on his fucking Bible, he had a picture of Cesare Borgia, right? But again, even that organization, the Vatican, is going to be destroyed, right? They're the false prophet, and that ultimately span all these different doctrines at these churches, right? Pentecostal, the Baptists, the Catholics, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witness, all those schools, man. And it says, verse 20, verse 20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, and who wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast. Again, that's an RFID implantable chip. So do not take the coming implantable biometric chip that they're going to say is a requirement for you to use their system. It says, these both, it says, and receive the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image, right? Those Israelites who are simply just lost in the American way, the American culture. These both are cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone, and the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, with sword proceeded out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. So this is what John's seeing, right? That lake of fire that they're going to be cast into is ultimately America and the European nations and Israel basically being caught up in these nuclear bombs, and also the laser beams are going to be coming out of the chariots when the Lord shows up. This is what's coming for these Edomites, and they know it, but they're still trying to fight against it. Hence why the Bible says that there was war in heaven. Satan and his angels fought against God and his angels. So either way, Akim, hopefully this video was edifying. Hopefully I was able to break down how we're in the cusp of seeing biblical prophecy play out regarding the Amalekites and also the Carmanians and the Arabs, or the house of Ishmael and the house of Edom, or Elam, excuse me. So with all that, let's go and give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushai, Bashem, Rukakodash, Brakathe Yahweh, Brakathe Washai, Brakathe Yahweh, Brakathe Washai, Brakathe Yahweh, Brakathe Washai, Bahashem, Rukakodash, the water Yabashem Washai, for allowing us to have this lesson today. And again, see you, Akim, in next week, Lord willing, and I'll see you throughout the week. And hopefully, some of you, Akim, if you go to my Yeshaya 3 channel, if you go to my profile, you'll see it. On there, I'm re-uploading the iniquities of the antiquities of the Jew by Flavius Josephus. It's an audiobook. It's a great hear if you just want to just listen to some history, listen to our ancient history that talks about how we were as a people, how we fell to the Romans. Right now, I'm also uploading the audiobooks of the wars of the Jews, which focuses more on the Maccabean wars and all the crazy stuff that happened during that time. But again, that you'll find that on my Yeshaya 3 channel, which you can find in my profile. So either way, Akim, Thawada for joining. Yahweh Bashem Ashai, brought a thumb to you, Akim and Akwathium out there. Stay sharp. Know that these devils, they're full on pushing out their disassociation, mind magic and stuff, right? They're trying to disassociate the people with this Epstein stuff. Understand, man, God wins in the end, right? These devils, they're gonna do all this stuff, but it's all gonna be for naught. But again, you gotta be careful with these devils, with their magic. They're gonna tell you some horrible stories, but again, if you can't handle it, remember, observe, don't absorb. Don't wait. When you hear a lot of this wicked shit, don't take it in and make it part of your spirit, right? This is why you gotta ultimately just observe it. Okay, this is why the apostles always tell people, man, if you want to go into the book of Jasher, you want to go into these other books, you could do it, man, but if you get caught up in them, you're going to get messed up, and that's on you. And that's because those people who get messed up by reading those books or get messed up by researching other doctrine, they get all bugged out because they absorbed knowledge which they weren't supposed to absorb it, right? And they're only supposed to observe it, study it, learn about it, right? The Bible tells us, study, it says, know the whole matter before thy rebuke, right? So this is why we got to look into all these things and find out what they're about. So either way, Akim, I'm digressing. Hopefully this video was edifying. Until next time, Shalom.